I'm going to make a prediction now. I think if Conor McGregor wins against Michael Chandler...
Shut up and sit down.
It's time!
What is the crack, everyone? Welcome back to Bernie Talks Fighting. You may have noticed that the backdrop behind me isn't the usual red colour. I've lit it up green, and it can only be green for one reason, and that's because the notorious Conor McGregor has finally announced that he's coming back to the UFC, and we're going to see him fight Michael Chandler on the 29th of June, International Fight Week in Las Vegas. Conor McGregor has said this is the greatest sporting comeback of all time. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down whether or not he can pull this off and what's his chances of actually beating Michael Chandler in this fight. And I'll also be discussing how this fight came to fruition and why it's taken so long. The first main talking point you have to consider when you think about Conor McGregor is how inactive he has been of late. Let me read you out some statistics. When Conor McGregor steps in the cage against Michael Chandler, it'll be 3 years since his last fight, and that was obviously a defeat against Dustin Poirier. If we look even further back than that, it's 5.5 years since Conor fought Khabib. Within them 5.5 years, we've seen Conor fight 4 times. We've seen him get beat by Khabib, we've seen him beat Cowboy Cerrone, and we've seen him be defeated by Dustin Poirier twice. Obviously last time out was the leg break, but it was still a defeat. It still looked like he was getting beaten that fight. And then we can go even further back than that again, and it was a full 2 years before the Khabib fight, the last time Conor McGregor had stepped in the octagon. This was against Eddie Alvarez. Obviously it was a brilliant performance from McGregor that night, and it's one that goes down in the history books and one of the best performances we've seen by someone in the UFC. In between the Alvarez and Khabib fight, he did fight Floyd Mayweather in boxing, but this doesn't count as MMA. His training would have been completely different for it. So we're not going to count this. So all in all, in the last 7.5 years, which has been Conor McGregor's prime, we've seen him fight 5 times in MMA or UFC. We've seen him fight 5 times and he's lost 3 of them. This is an absolutely terrible record. And I don't think it's all down to Conor's fault. I think there's a lot of this is down to contract negotiations. But it does leave us pondering and wondering, why has Conor McGregor been so active? He is the UFC's biggest star ever. No one has done more for this sport than Conor McGregor. Why is the UFC not giving him fights? Is it McGregor's fault? Is it the UFC's fault? That's what I'm going to get into now. Just before the Khabib fight, Conor McGregor signed a new 6-fight deal with the UFC. It is very beneficial for the UFC to have Conor McGregor tied up in a contract because it stops him being able to step away and make real big money at the likes of boxing, the way Ngannou has done, the way McGregor done before. I know the UFC profited from the Floyd Mayweather fight, but the UFC is scared of Conor McGregor stepping away and really making money elsewhere. Conor McGregor could go and fight in Saudi Arabia tomorrow and make millions upon millions for fighting the likes of Floyd Mayweather again, Manny Pacquiao. You can pick anyone. Conor McGregor would fight them and make millions and millions of pounds for one fight. Dana White and the UFC obviously doesn't want this to happen. How do they stop this from happening? They can delay the fights that he has on his contract, because Conor McGregor has now 2 fights left on his contract. If they delay that for as long as possible and try and force Conor McGregor into signing a new contract where the UFC will get some financial benefit from it, well then this is in the UFC's best interest. But I think this is why we've seen a very slow process, and we've seen Conor McGregor really calling for fights and the UFC not really making them. This isn't the first time this has happened. We've seen this happen with Cowboy Cerrone as well. It was if the UFC was delaying the fight as long as possible. Conor was dying to come back. He was saying time and time again that he wanted to come back, and the fight just wasn't getting made. And this has happened again. We were told at the very start that Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler would be doing The Ultimate Fighter, and once that goes live, we will then see them 2 fight each other in the finale after. Of course, this didn't happen, and if Dana White is asked about this now, he kind of acts as if this was never the plan in the first place, and he gets at journalists for asking about this, which it seems weird to me that he would do this, because it was Dana White that said it would happen in the first place.
The Ultimate Fighter was over back in August, and I can't imagine the plan was for him to be out as long as he's been.
Well, first problem was that he broke that shin bone. He was recovering from that. That was one of the reasons we had it. And the other problem is he's fucking rich. Don't
get me wrong, I'm not saying all of this is Dana and the UFC's fault. Conor McGregor is a very busy man, and he's got a lot of business obligations. Obviously the film with Prime we just seen, Roadhouse. He's got the whiskey company, he's got the pub down in Dublin, which is a very good pub by the way. I did go down and meeting in there, and the food is absolutely banging. I'll stick a wee picture of it up. He's got all these business obligations and he's flying all around the world, so it will be hard for Conor McGregor to set aside 3 months probably for a fight camp and for the fight. So I'm not saying that this is all the UFC and Dana's fault. but I really don't think they've been helping the situation here. This fight has been the most anticipated fight I have read about or heard about in a long time. This is a fight that's maybe a year and a half in the making at this point. Dana White's been asked about it 100 times. You would think he would do a big promotion for their reveal. It was rumoured that there was a big announcement on fight week of UFC 300 and Dana White played it off.
Any big announcements you want to kick this thing off with today?
Don't believe anything you read on the internet.
And then I thought, surely if it was McGregor, they'd be doing this big thing. You would hear the Irish music, the Irish flag would come out, Conor McGregor walks out, maybe get a face-off with him and Chandler at UFC 300. This is how I thought they were going to do it. They've done things like this before. And look at the Brock Lesnar in UFC 200, for example. They are known to do these big comeback promotional videos. Why did Conor McGregor not get one? Let's look at how Dana White announces the Conor McGregor fight.
The co-main event.
I'm getting notes. This has never happened before.
So Dana White gets given a note. A note of all things. Surely Dana White is going into this press conference and already knows if he's going to announce McGregor versus Chandler. This is one of the biggest talking points in the sport. This is, if Max Holloway didn't do what he done in UFC 300, this fight announcement would be getting more press than UFC 300.
June 29th. Conor versus Chandler. 5 rounds, 170 pounds. Who's got the next question?
This is a huge moment for the sport, and Dana White, I don't know if he needed reminded. Why the fuck did there have to be a note here? Surely he knew before. This is what I don't understand. So, Conor versus Chandler, 5 round, 170 pounds, and a little smirk off Dana, and that's it. That's all we get for Conor McGregor coming back. No big promotional video, no big shebang. This is a fight we've all been waiting on. Everyone's been wondering when it's going to happen, and Dana gets given a note. They say that he's going to announce the fight and he does it like that. Let's watch a video of how Dana used to act around Conor whenever he was coming on stage.
All right, let's get this show started. The reigning, defending, 155-pound champion of the UFC, the notorious Conor McGregor.
That is what I wanted to see from Dana White. I wanted to see something similar from that, and it couldn't have been any further away if he had tried. I don't know why Dana White is doing this. Whenever he speaks about Conor, it's not as if there's animosity, and when Conor speaks about Dana, it's not as if there's been a huge amount of beef or anything between them. But the way Dana reacts to Conor McGregor and the way he treats him is completely different to how he used to. And I don't know if it is because of these contract negotiations. It could be. He might not want to push Conor McGregor up too much, because if Conor McGregor comes an even bigger star, we all know what's going to happen. As I said before, he's going to walk away once his contract is done, and he'll go and make big money in the likes of Saudi Arabia. He can do this anyway, so I don't see how it benefits Dana White by not pushing Conor McGregor and pushing this fight out there, because Dana White, at the end of the day, Conor McGregor is going to do what he wants to do. If he wants to have 2 more fights in the UFC and leave, he's going to do that. And I think we should let him do that, because he's done so much for the UFC, and the UFC's done so much for him too. But for at the end in this sour note, and for us to only see Conor McGregor 4 times throughout the prime of his career, to see him 4 times in 5.5 years is absolutely criminal. It's absolutely ridiculous, I think. And I think a lot of it is down to the UFC for not giving them the fights. Can Conor McGregor win this fight against Michael Chandler? Conor McGregor is coming in as a favourite here, but I am not going to lie, the odds are stacked against him from whenever I look at it. We've got the obvious things such as the leg break. The leg break is a very hard one to recover from. Obviously, he hasn't fought since. He does seem to be training and stuff, and he seems to be doing a lot of rehabilitation for it, or he's done rehabilitation for it. But this is an injury that some people never get over. Let's look at Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. There's fighters who's had this injury before and they just never recover from it. If his leg is fine and it doesn't get injured in the build up, let's look at how long he has been out of the cage. As I mentioned at the start of the video, ring rust is real. We have seen it recently with the likes of Henry Cejudo, another former double champ who's came back after some time off, and he just hasn't looked the same. Ring rust is a real thing, and it really could affect Conor McGregor here. Another thing that could go against McGregor here is if Michael Chandler finally decides to use his wrestling in some of his fights. I don't know why he would start now. I don't think he'll do it. But if Michael Chandler uses his wrestling, I'd be interested to see if Conor McGregor's takedown defense has been drilled enough over the past few years. They cope with it and they manage to stuff them takedowns from Michael Chandler. Besides all of this, there is a good chance here that Conor McGregor can get the job done. I think this is a tailor-made fight for him against Michael Chandler, as long as he doesn't use his wrestling. The fact that this has taken so long, as much as it's been frustrating for McGregor and for all of the fans, it probably does benefit McGregor, because Michael Chandler is now also going to be suffering from ring rust. Michael Chandler was someone that was very, very active for years, and you know, he never took too long out of the cage. But once this fight happens, it'll now be a year and a half since Michael Chandler last fought, and that was a loss against Dustin Poirier. So this is pretty unheard of for Michael Chandler. He's usually a lot more active than this, and this ring rust, a year and a half out from being under the lights, this can play a big difference, as I mentioned before. So the fact that this has dragged on a bit, it nearly has benefited McGregor in some sort of way. Michael Chandler's low fight IQ might also play a key factor here in this fight. Michael Chandler likes to charge in with the head down, throwing overhands, and there isn't much style or much technique to his striking. Conor McGregor, the man that said timing beats speed, if he still sticks by this, he can really capitalise on this. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage over Michael Chandler. If Conor McGregor can step back and timing beats speed, if he can time that left hand perfectly over the top, he can knock Michael Chandler out, and what a moment this would be. But it's very, very possible that this could happen. Whether you love McGregor or whether you hate him, you must be buzzing to see him back in the UFC. All this does is bring more eyes to the sport. He is an absolute superstar. There's no one like him in the world of sport, never just mind MMA. There's not another guy like him, so the fact that he's coming back is very, very good for the sport, and I am excited for it, and I really hope he can get the job done here. What a story it would be if Conor McGregor can come back and get a run in the UFC. I don't know how possible it is, but if he pulls this off, this will be one of the greatest comebacks in sport in history, as Conor McGregor has said. After all the adversity he's went through with his leg break, all the time out, all the contract negotiations, and also with the lifestyle that he's been living. He's been away partying, he's been out on his yacht, he's been attending events here, there and everywhere. He's always in the pub that he owns. You know, the lifestyle Conor McGregor has been living is not the same as the lifestyle Michael Chandler has been living. Michael Chandler is Mr. Company. He's very professional, very disciplined. He's been training the whole time. He's been throwing balls at the wall. We see videos of it all the time. Michael Chandler, he trains all year round. So the lifestyle these two have been living is polar opposite. So if Conor McGregor can come back and get this done, it would be an absolutely brilliant moment for the UFC, and I would love to see it as well. It would leave one fight left on his contract. I think he would only have the one fight and then he would probably leave. But who knows what he could do in that fight. I'm going to make a prediction now. I think if Conor McGregor wins against Michael Chandler, he'll have one fight left on his contract. I can see him cutting a deal with the UFC where Dana says, you sign a new contract with us, we'll fast track you to the title now and you'll get your title shot. This would be unbelievable. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but it would not surprise me if it happened. And who doesn't want to see Conor McGregor in another title fight? It would bring, again, as I said, bring so many eyes to the sport, and it would be a monumental moment for the sport and for Conor McGregor as well. Thank you very much for sticking around to the end of the video. I'll be making plenty more videos on this fight as it approaches. Make sure to like, share and subscribe to Bernie Talks Fighting, and I will see you in the next video.